What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We have made it to a Friday, almost made it to another weekend. And we have spent the last week talking about the draft the Seattle Seahawks just had. We have spent the last week breaking down our thoughts on picks, our thoughts on value, our thoughts on need, our thoughts on basically whatever angle we can come up with to talk about these players, because it's going to be a while before we see them, and it's going to be a long time before we can even really start to evaluate them. But I thought it'd be fun to, now that we're about a week away from the draft, do a video where I talk about not what I thought about the draft or what anybody in my comments section or anybody who watches my videos thinks about the draft. I want to talk about what they think about the draft. And when I say they, I mean the pundits. What did the major NFL writers think about the Seattle Seahawks 2025 draft class? So I pulled up a selection of NFL draft grades from a bunch of major websites, the usual suspects. We have NFL.com, we're going to go to ESPN, we're going to do Pro Football Focus. We're going to take a look at a bunch of different major NFL websites or sports websites to see what they thought about the Seattle Seahawks draft, to get an idea of the, I don't want to say professional, because I don't think everybody that puts one of these lists together is a professional. Certainly some of them are, but at the very least, pundits, people who do this for a living. So maybe professional would be the right word if you're doing it for a living, but regardless, let's see what they have to say. So we're going to start here with the NFL.com draft grades, and I want to stress that draft grades at this point really don't mean much, as we've learned many, many, many times. So this is just something we're doing for fun rather than trying to figure out what the truth is. The truth is going to be found out over the next several years, especially when it comes to a player like Jalen Milroe, who may not be on the field for 2 years in any significant way. Certainly a player like a Riley Mills as well, somebody who will probably start the season on injured reserve and may not play at all this season. So understand that it's going to be a while before we know who was right and who was wrong. But nevertheless, let's get a feel for whether or not people are on our side. So the NFL.com grade is an A-, as you can see. I've had it on screen this whole time. A-. And you can see how that breaks down here. Their day one grade, we only had one pick on day one, of course, was an A, as was day 3, and day 2 was a B. So you can see where their mild criticism of this draft is. It's on that day 2, which I agree with personally. I think that is a pretty fair way to grade the draft if you're filtering it through a lens of potential, I guess. Right? Because as little as I think of Milroe's chances of making it in the NFL, he does have a lot of potential. And certainly guys like Zabel and Emenwari, and I'd even go down to some of the guys who got in day 3. They have a lot of potential. There's just certainly some bust factor there as well. You can see their analysis as well. They liked the Zabel pick a lot, of course. They gave it an A. They liked the Emenwari pick. They don't really like the trade up that we made to get him, which, I mean, to me, it was kind of a no-brainer, because Emenwari wasn't going to fall much further, and you weren't going to get a player of his potential later in that second round. They also didn't seem to really care for the Arroyo pick. If you read the blurb here, they did seem to appreciate the Milroe pick, so that's how they get to where they get. So they liked it. They liked it a lot. They gave it an A-. Most of the grades, if you go through this article, are mostly pretty positive. They give out a lot of higher grades. A lot of teams are doing just as well, if not a little bit better than the Seahawks. So we're not exactly at the top of the class, but we are in a very good spot according to NFL.com. Okay, now we hop on over to CBS. CBS gives the Seahawks an A, but that A is only the 17th highest ranking draft class. Oh, let me kill that. Of the 32 teams. So they actually think our draft class is slightly, and I do mean slightly, below average, but they still give it an A. So what I would say is that CBS is being very, very kind with their grading. So you go to their little write-up here. Favorite pick was Nick Emenwari, which I almost agree with. I think that Horton was a little bit better in terms of pure value. I think that's a slightly better pick, but Emenwari may end up being the most impactful player from this group. Best value was Ricky White, and most surprising pick was Jalen Milroe. So to scroll up here, by the way, just to give an idea of how the grading on this page works, you can see all these A's. Everybody's getting an A. Everybody's getting a rave review. 5 teams get an A+, which to me is... I mean, if that's how you want to scale it, then I guess you can scale it that way, but yeah, it kind of feels like the grades become almost meaningless. Like, look at all these A's. I have to get down to 21 before I find a single A-. And how far do I have to go to get to actually like a bad grade? Like the Bears are our first B+, the Lions B+, Steelers B, Jets B, Vikings B. We got to get down to like the bottom 5 before we get to even some lackluster grades. Does anybody even get like a C here? Well, the Browns the Browns and the Bengals, right? So maybe they need to readjust the way they look at the draft. I don't know. Maybe they just want to say they don't think anybody flat out failed, but it feels a little bit goofy when you give a team an A and then you say they had a slightly below average draft class. I don't know. All right. The Athletic through New York Times did a draft grading article here, and they were one of the groups that didn't like what the Seahawks did very much. Although you should note their scaling is very, very different than CBS. You can see that they have several teams they gave an F. They have a bunch of D- and Ds, a D+, a C-. So the Seahawks got a C, which sounds really bad, but at the same time, it's actually kind of average if you take a look at the way they grade it out. Like, you have a pretty good grade curve here that encompasses the entire grading alphabet, right? So I think that doesn't look so bad when you really break it down. If I scroll down a little bit here, we can get to our picks here. They kind of grade out their each pick by the ranking of the player within the position. They don't really say necessarily a ton about whether or not they think each pick was stand out or anything like that. The blurb is, I don't think their draft was anything special. A lot of this grade depends on Nick Emenwari. Projections go both ways, so as much upside as there is, you have to wonder about how it looks if he doesn't hit. Pair that pick with an interior offensive lineman in the first round, and the ceiling on this class is capped, which is an observation I'm not seeing a lot of people make, but I do think it carries some validity. I think that John Schneider certainly oversells it. There is something to be said for the relative impact of an interior offensive lineman compared to a blue chip or borderline blue chip edge rusher or even a cornerback. So I can see why they come to that conclusion, even though I think that in this instance, there should be another emotion kind of overriding even that element of it. So for whatever it's worth, The Athletic, not a huge fan. But again, when you look at the scaling, I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, next up will be Fox Sports. And they were certainly very rosy in their evaluation of the Seahawks draft. They gave it an A. They really seemed to like the Gray Zabel pick, which it's not hard to see why. And they also seem to really like Emenwari, Arroyo, and Milroe. And it's a very positive take, right? And I think that generally speaking, most of this article by Fox Sports is pretty positive. They do seem to think our draft class was one of the best in the league. Like, if we scroll through here, they gave a B- to Tampa, a B to Tennessee, Washington got a B, so C+ for the Niners. So I think that on the whole, this article is mostly positive about these draft classes, but you can see they gave out some pretty bad scores. They gave out some stuff that is pretty pessimistic even. So for them to give the Seahawks an A, yeah, it doesn't mean quite as much as the Athletic A's because those seem to be very rare. But you can see how the Seahawks, according to Fox Sports, had one of the best drafts in the league. So that's cool. They really liked it. Pro Football Focus gave the Seahawks the same grade. They gave them an A. I'm not going to go through all the blurbs they wrote for all the players here, but they are a big fan of Zabel. They are optimistic mostly about Worry. They seem to more or less like Arroyo. And Milrow, I mean, if you read these blurbs, they don't seem to really take too firm of a stance. They're just like, well, let's describe the player, let's describe the upside, let's describe the downside. And they don't really say specifically whether or not they loved everything. But if you scroll through this article, they're not handing out A's to everybody. They gave the 49ers a D, Steelers B+, the Eagles they gave an A, Jets B+, Giants A-, Saints C+. So these grades are not getting handed out for free. They are giving out some A's, but they're not giving out A's to everybody. So their A to Seattle is certainly very significant. So they thought we had one of the best drafts in the league. Bleacher Report. Let's go over to Bleacher Report here. Take a look at what they had for the Seahawks draft class here. And by the way, I know it says 30 of 33, but this is alphabetical by team name, so they're not saying we had the 30th best draft. They gave the Seahawks a B, so a little bit more of a middling grade. They do seem to like the Zabel pick. They seem to appreciate the Worry pick a lot. And they mostly, you read these blurbs, they seem to appreciate most of the picks. They seem to mostly grade the reason why the grade wasn't higher than a B was mostly because the Seahawks, what they didn't do, they wanted us to draft more interior offensive linemen, which I can understand that point of view, but there it is. Okay, so there's one more I want to take a look at here. ESPN, I believe this is, Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper's been doing this forever. He gave the Seahawks an A as well, and we'll scroll through the article to see what he's giving these other teams to get an idea for whether or not that really matters. So he was a big fan of Gray Zabel, big fan of Worry. He loved Arroyo, which, again, that one's a little bit divisive right now. I'm not seeing a lot of consensus on Arroyo. Milrow as well. And he also really liked most of the stuff on day 3 as well. So overall, I don't see anything negative here from Mel Kiper in his evaluation. He mostly shouted out Damian Martinez and Riley Mills, excuse me, when it came to the day 3 guys, but he did seem to think positively of all the picks. So, hey, Mel Kiper's a fan. Now, when you actually take a look at the grading, the only team he thought did better than the Seahawks was the Cleveland Browns. He gave them an A+ and ranked them number 1. The Seahawks ranked number 2. So if you scroll down here to get an idea of how he scales, you get down here, you're getting down to like B's, getting down to, we're going to get to some B- in a second here. So you can see how he kind of scales the way he reads grades. And then you get down here, we start getting more into like the C's. C+, C+, C. So he doesn't give out a lot of negative grades. He definitely gives out more good than bad. And the lowest grade he gives out is a C, so he's pretty generous. But if you were to rank our draft class compared to every other draft class, he thinks we did the second best. And that is really all I wanted to take a look at in this video. I thought it was pretty interesting. Most of these grades are very positive. The one grade that was bad was the Athletic, and the Athletic was a harsh grader on everybody. Like, I think our draft class was slightly below average by their measure, but only slightly. So even that doesn't really hit that hard. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you guys feel. I want to present this alternative perspective because I do think that there is some upside to this class that other people are a little more willing to give credit than I am. And it's interesting to see how other people come down on this stuff. It's interesting to see what the professionals or the pundits do. So they're pretty positive on it, man. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one of these major websites really bashing the Seahawks draft class. Again, the Athletic was the closest I could find. So let me know what you guys think. See you guys later today. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see. Maybe I'll post another video. But again, I'm mostly just prepping for work over the next couple weeks with the draft class. So probably not See you guys on Twitch, maybe. See you guys later. Go Hawks.